Hello and welcome to What's the Story? We're an inquisitive bunch of hosts from the What's the Story team on a mission to uncover stories about faith and courage from everyday people. And to help us do just that, we get the privilege to chat with amazing guests and delve into their faith journey, the hurdles they've overcome, and the life lessons they have learned along the way. Now, if you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter on our website, which is whatsthestorypodcast.com. It's your direct line to the latest episodes and detailed show notes, and they all get delivered straight to your inbox. And the best part, it's absolutely free. What's the Story is brought to you by Crowd Church. We understand that stepping into a traditional church might not be everybody's cup of tea. And that's where Crowd Church steps in, providing a digital sanctuary, a safe space to explore the Christian faith where you can engage in meaningful conversations rather than just simply spectating. So whether you are new to the Christian faith or are in search of a new church family, we invite you to visit us at www.crowd.church. And if you've got any questions, just drop us an email at hello@crowd.church. We're here to help and would genuinely love to connect with you. And now, without further ado, let's meet your host and our very special guest for today.
Hi, this is Sada Fainin, and I'm here with Emma Fast, who is a longtime friend of mine. We've known each other for years. I mean, like since we were in grade school. So I'm gonna...
Over 30.
Is that right?
It's got to be.
That's scary. That's really scary. Yes, of course that's right. Yeah, so Emma's here, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear her story and to get to know her. So Emma, tell us about your growing up and tell us about how you became a Christian.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sadaf. It's really, my ulterior motive here was so I could have a nice chat with you, really. So it's really nice to see you. Yeah, so like Sadaf, I grew up in Pakistan. I'm not originally from Pakistan, as you can maybe tell. So my mum is Finnish. My father is from the UK, so he hails from Bristol, the West Country. And in 1986, they decided to move to Pakistan and work in northwest Pakistan, what used to be the NWFP, but is now Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And they worked in medical work with a Finnish Christian organization. And the way things were done in those days, in the late 80s, kids were sent off to the boarding school that was in the foothills of the Himalayas. And there were, about maybe 150 of us?
I want to say 150, yeah.
Yeah, from kindergarten to grade 12, from lots of nationalities. So in our graduating class, I think there were 18 people from 14 different nationalities. Oh, wow. Now, of course, some of us were kind of half, quite a few of those. So then you get two nationalities for one. But so that's where I grew up, in that boarding school. So that from the age of 6, actually, same as you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Sadaf was in the year above me. So we went through boarding together. So some of the information that I hold on Sadaf, I will not be airing publicly.
Thank you.
Because it goes both ways. So I mean, it was a very kind of weird childhood in many ways, quite unusual, such a mix and a melting pot. Not everything about it was beautiful or lovely. I mean, I know some people had a real struggle with being in boarding. I overall had quite a positive experience. Lots of time to just play with friends. Quite a tight-knit group. I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of people from those days. Some of them are still my closest friends. Also really benefited from a lot of really amazing people. I mean, I sometimes feel growing up on the mission field, as we say, you kind of see the good and the bad and the ugly of Christianity. It's like that whole thing that C.S. Lewis says about some of the best adverts for Christianity being its adherents, and some of the worst adverts sometimes too. We're human, right? Everyone is, and people have kind of, anyway, different issues they bring to the table. So I feel like I had the privilege of meeting some really amazing people who really spoke into my life. And that's kind of my story of faith, is that I can kind of name one moment when I kind of prayed, Jesus, please come into my heart. But as I've grown older, I've kind of started thinking maybe that one moment isn't quite as significant as I always thought it was. It was much more of a process, just lots of people sort of speaking into my life, modeling their faith, teaching me. I mean, I feel like I got really good education in the Bible, what it teaches, and how people have lived out their faith from a variety of different cultures, lots of different denominations, you know. So a quirky childhood.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It was a very enriching experience for me too. And I understand not everyone felt that way. But yeah, I'm thankful for that blessing for sure. So Emma, tell me, how did your growing up in this, you know, your parents are from two separate countries. You're now in a third country, rubbing shoulders with kids from all over the world. How did this impact or shape your identity and your sense of belonging?
Very good question. So, I mean, I feel really privileged not only to have grown up in that kind of, that what we call the TCK, third culture kid kind of environment, but also the Pakistan side of things. I mean, I sometimes felt like I had a few different lives. You can relate to that, I know. So then I had my Pakistani friends also, where my parents lived, and then I spoke in Urdu and had, you know, much more contact with a variety of Pakistani cultures. And how enriching was that? I just feel so privileged to have had that opportunity to see such a you know, part of the world that my parents weren't from. You know, I sometimes feel I've got these extremes, you know, Finnish, you know, very kind of liberal, and, you know, the cradle of nudity and sauna and all that kind of stuff. And just, you know, quiet, lots of trees and peace and quiet. And then to Pakistan, like, very conservative, very busy, very loud. But yeah, I consider a lot of my Pakistani friends still some of my best friends. I'm very thankful to have had that experience. In terms of kind of identity and belonging, well, I once did a training because I was going to teach in Kabul one year, and I was working with TCKs. And they gave us like this checklist, like these are the typical features of what a third culture kid is like. And I looked down that list, I was like, yeah, tick, tick, tick. I fit the profile. Basically read that and then you know who I am. It's kind of annoying to fit into a box so neatly. But yeah, I think a couple things about it. One, I think I kind of adapt quite a lot to who I'm talking to. Like sometimes I feel like a bit of a chameleon that has maybe strengths, maybe weaknesses. It can be stressful sometimes, like feeling like I'm the translator, you know, like I did a master's in Finland some years ago, and it was an international master's. And so I had people from lots of different countries again. And I had this Aussie course mate and I had this Ghanaian course mate. Both English is their first language. But the Aussie guy would always like use loads of idioms, like, oh, the traffic was completely chocker this morning. And I could just see that my Ghanaian friend had no idea what he's talking about. And I always feel like I've got to translate. I've got to help them to understand each other. Anyway, stuff like that. I think I also always see that almost every issue has two sides. There's this way of looking at it, and there's this way of looking at it. Oh, and there's this way of looking at it too. And so I probably sometimes dither a bit and don't have one strong view. I can always see multiple sides of looking at the same thing. Then I think a sense of restlessness also, you know, I always want to move. If I can't move country, then I want to move house, or I want to move job. If I can't do any of that, then I want to move the furniture. Like
that's totally
those itchy feet. What other way is there to live?
I know. It reminds me actually every time I do that, because I'm exactly the same. I just end up moving things around in the house. It reminds me of all the times in boarding school when we used to rejig our bedrooms and make bunk beds back into low beds and then do triple beds and then move things around.
Oh my word. Do you know that, I learned something from boarding school. Do you remember ant hills? Where you had the high bed, then the middle size bed, then the normal bed, and then the single mattress.
Bed. Yes.
And you can put them. So now, because I have 4 children, we live in a very small house in London. They have an anthill in their bedroom.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that's what we called it.
Yeah.
But
so
that's cool.
Life lessons that have come in handy.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on to your kids as well. But before I get there, I want to ask you, how has your faith helped you navigate the complexities of, living in different cultures and your identity in that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's a hard question to answer. There's so many different ways of looking at it. But I mean, one very tangible example is, I suppose, I've always had a sense that God is with me and God sees what I'm going through. So I've had many times when I felt quite misunderstood. Maybe none more so than when I first moved from Pakistan. So I was 17 when I graduated from our high school there in Murray and came to the UK. And I came by myself. So I was really quite alone. And there was also quite a lot of stuff happening in my family. So it was quite a troubled and turbulent time in many ways. But I was incredibly isolated. And I'm here living with like this bunch of white British girls who some of them are still my friends now, great friends. But I really felt like an alien from Mars. And, everyone's talking about what they watched on TV as kids. And everyone's got this sense of humor that I just was like, how is that funny? It takes a while to adapt to a new culture's way of laughing at things. And I mean, now these days I feel quite British and I kind of have to watch myself, like, try not to be exclusive in your humor, right? Like, bear in mind that not everyone finds the same things funny, But I've always had a strong sense that whatever is going on, however isolated I feel, God is there. He knows. I'm privileged to be able to talk to the creator of the universe, try and seek his perspective. I might not always have the answer. It's often a big process to kind of figure out why something happened. Maybe I don't know, we'll never get some answers, but just I know he's there and I can talk to him. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's ultimately my identity is that I am his.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also belong to a community. That's helped a lot over the years. That wasn't easy at the beginning. It took a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know also from experience of moving from country to country and cultures, you kind of you become a foreigner, don't you? In every sense of the word, you move to a new country and you're a foreigner, and you become, as you say, you're feeling quite British now, but then you feel too much of a foreigner to go back to where you came from. So you're just kind of in this middle ground that doesn't really resonate with anybody.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's not an easy place to be. But I really liked what you said there, that having the Lord in it with you, who sees you through it all and understands you, it's such a blessing. And I think it's what pulls you closer to Him, isn't it? Having that space. Yeah.
Yeah, and to a degree, I mean, as a Christian, we are told we are foreigners and exiles. We are sojourners in the world. And I think having a little bit of that restlessness is not a bad thing because, the world is not the way it's meant to be, and we are on a journey. And, one day the world will be the way it is, and we are meant to long for that new day. And
No, I totally agree. So Emma, you're here now in the UK, as you said. What does life look like?
Well, so it wasn't that I came from Pakistan and then just stayed in the UK. I've had a few other meanderings. I alluded to working in Afghanistan for a year, and then I was in Finland doing my master's for a while, and then I married this Canadian guy and
who was
lived in Canada
who you
for a
knew
while.
From Pakistan.
Yes, also a fellow. Yes, see, I fit that TCK box too. I married another TCK. I'm a living stereotype. So, what was the question? What does life look like now? Yeah. So we find ourselves living in Sutton, which is really like the most average place in the UK to live. Like, we have sort of average levels of ethnic minority versus white British people, average demographics in every way. I don't know why we're in Saturn in some ways. It's probably not the place on earth I would have chosen. But at the same time, we've been here now almost 12 years. So I was pregnant with our first when we moved here. And now I have this wonderful community here. I can't go outside without bumping into somebody that I know. And I really like that. I work locally in a secondary school. Our kids go to school here locally. We're involved in a local church who have been a really wonderful community for us. And so life looks like, dropping kids to school, picking kids up from school, going to work, teaching secondary school kids. Now my kids are starting to get into that age. So I'm going to just have a lot of teenagers in my life. Jordan, my husband, works as an engineer in international development. So he travels sometimes. Just kind of quite a normal life.
Yeah, I mean, it probably from the outside looking in, it probably looks quite normal. But what's it like raising now multicultural kids? Because they're kind of repeating that pattern, aren't they?
Interesting. So, on one hand, the kids have 3 nationalities. They could have 3 passports. On the other hand, they're growing up in Sutton, and that sometimes is scary to me. You know, I think, oh, quick, we got to, like, I don't know, move to Nairobi or something so they can experience
some life experience,
the culture. I mean, it's been a journey for 12 years. So I don't know if I've said yet, but we have 4 children. Our 3rd pregnancy, have to be a bit careful how I say this, but it included a few surprising elements. One being that when I went for my scan, I thought maybe I was about 10 weeks pregnant. However, it turned out I was about 18 weeks pregnant, and it turned out there were 2 heartbeats. And so I was halfway through a pregnancy with twins before I kind of twigged, really. So that was my good lesson in human biology for me. And I'm kind of the model for all my friends of, be careful, be careful. But of course, now we have them. We're not going to send them back.
No.
So we had a 1 child, then 3-year gap, 2nd child, and then 20 months gap, and then twins. So I had 3 under the age of 2. So that means 3 in nappies. It means I have perfected some wicked juggling skills, like answering the door while breastfeeding 2, while using the other leg to stop a toddler from escaping, things like that. Lots of memories of things like that. So, I mean, sorry, I can't remember what the question was. Am I going into what I've learned about that? Sorry, Sam.
No, that's fine. Yeah, tell us what you've learned.
I mean, let's be honest, a lot of parenting is drudgery. It is. It's just hard work. And it's not glorious. So shout out to everyone who's in those years.
Yeah.
They're coming out of that a little bit now. Life it's still hard and busy. I mean, having 3 the same kind of age just means that we're loud. Wherever we go, we're loud. We have lots of fights. I spend a lot of time refereeing. Identical twin girls and their fights are something to behold. So even this morning, okay, you think you've reached the limit of how many things that humans can fight about. But this morning, so my eldest 2 have read the Harry Potter series. We're quite big readers in my family, which makes me happy as an English teacher. But the twins are now reading the 2nd Harry Potter book. And they're fighting about who's ahead of the other. This was this morning's conversation. How do you sort that out? One of them wants to take the book to school, but then the other one gets angry because then she'll be like a chapter ahead of her later when we get home. One of them wants to do it on audiobook. One of them wants dad to read to them. One of them wants to read it by themselves. I don't know.
How do you navigate that?
How do you navigate that? And then how do you kind of try and bring it to, right, let's look at our hearts here, How do we learn life skills about listening? And expressing what you want, and you're allowed to have opinions and feelings, but we have to do that respectfully. And
Yeah.
that's just, that's before 7 a.m., right? So
Wow.
yeah. So I guess I've learned, I've made so many mistakes, and I'm very much learning about parenting. It's hard. It's wonderful. I've got 4 healthy children. Those are an absolute gift of God, and they make me laugh and smile and keep me busy and never bored. But my goodness, do I see how much I like control?
Yeah.
How
No, I
much I
think
like
we're all like
comfort.
that, aren't we? Yeah. Okay, let me go back a bit to your family unit growing
Yeah.
up, and your elder brother Mikhail
Yeah.
was in my class when we were in school together. So,
Yeah.
why don't you tell our listeners a bit about him?
Yes. So, as you well know, my brother was a brilliant person, possibly a genius. I always feel like the black sheep of the family intellectually. So there's 3 of us. So it was me and my brother, quite close in age, 18 months apart. He's my big brother. And then 8 years later, my sister, like 8 years after me, my sister was born. And she's wonderful and also very intelligent. She's gone into being a doctor. And my brother was always a big reader, big thinker. What do you say? You grow up with someone like that, 18 months apart. Sometimes it was like we were the same person, all my memories of childhood obviously include him. And he started, he had some troubles over the years, starting from his teenage years, struggled with quite a few different things. But he started having struggles with addictions in his sort of late teenage years. And he had that struggle for over 20 years. And he died. Actually, the anniversary of his death was on 2 years, this Sunday just gone. So, yeah, it's very much, on my mind. Still quite recent.
Yeah.
So he died following a long struggle with addictions of various types of different substances, which has had a huge impact on me and our whole family.
Yeah. So what, if you're happy to talk about this, how did it impact you? Because you said you're quite close in age. You almost felt like you were the same person oftentimes. How did this impact you?
It was just a big sorrow in my life. I just felt like I carried around worry. In the middle of the night, I'd wake up 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and I'd just automatically pray for Mikhail. It's kind of weird not to have that anymore. He traveled a lot, so there were times that we weren't massively in touch. But I'm so thankful that we stayed in touch and had, in many ways, quite a close relationship all through those years. Of course, it impacted so many things. It meant that visits were often quite chaotic. It usually took me a few days to kind of, in some ways, recover from seeing him, because as much fun as we had together, and I tried very much to kind of to keep it fun, and he tried really hard to keep it that it wasn't always really heavy, that we were just having fun together, that kind of we're 2 human beings, and it's not hard to do that with your brother. Like, obviously I was still fighting when we played Scrabble, about who would win, and we'd still send the board flying late into our 20s and 30s. We had a lot of fun together, but there was a very, very hard element to all the visits, because there was just a huge worry for him. There was a huge sorrow. It meant there was lots of sides of his life that I didn't know about fully. He probably tried to protect us quite a lot. One way I coped was often by reading a lot. I like to know about a topic. So, and I think quite a few of us in our family probably did the same, like a lot of research into heroin.
And to understand him.
Yeah, and kind of best approaches to support someone with those issues. But but at the same time, huge sense of powerlessness, helplessness, sometimes guilt. Am I doing the right thing? Am I in any way enabling that behavior? Am I doing everything I can to let him know that if he wants to get help, that I'm there for him? It's a constant churning and turmoil around that, of course. Yeah. And then, even then when I had kids, just a sadness that he wasn't in their life as much as he would have been if he hadn't had some of those struggles, that it was hard for him to sort of really be present with them. So I really cherish the memories and some of the videos I have of him with my kids when they were young. But like my youngest, they never really knew him, and that's really sad for me. Yeah.
So his struggles with his addictions grew from when he was in his late teens.
Yeah.
And it never really left him. Was it always just something that just got worse and worse over time?
Ultimately, yes, there were breaks, and he tried various different treatments. A few times I was involved in helping him with some of those. But he never kind of really was able to, in the long term, to overcome. If he stopped one addiction, then sometimes something else would take its place. So it was pretty chronic.
Yeah. No, it's very sad, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. He made us laugh so much in class. I remember
my word.
that.
Such a naughty sense of humor.
But I have to say too, that's true. But I have to say as well that when he left school and we, kind of went different ways, different directions, I lost touch with him for quite a while. And I know talking to you, I got a better sense of what that time was like for him. But tell our listeners about his brilliance.
Well, I mean, he could have done anything, we always said, in terms of career. He chose to go into journalism. He was an amazing writer. I mean, honestly, some of the funniest things that he ever wrote were about procrastinating about writing. I mean, I'm a procrastinator myself. It was nothing funnier than like someone writing a page about procrastinating. I don't know, just... Yeah, he made me laugh. His humor was often quite dark. He'd even make jokes about some of his addictions and things. And, you feel like, I really shouldn't be laughing about this. But he could always make us laugh. He did some really cool things. He did some really interesting research into some kind of groups. I don't know how much to go into this really, but just he was interested in the part of the world that we grew up in, let's say. Yeah. And he researched some sort of political groups and did some really amazing work on that. He wrote court reports for asylum seekers. And so say if there was an asylum seeker from, say, Balochistan in Pakistan, where there's so much awful stuff happening, he wrote a kind of a situation report, which then aided their asylum claim. So I just have this sense that, maybe there's people in the UK now safe, were granted asylum partly because of him having written those.
He's benefited from his work.
Yeah. And I mean, he was a lovely person. That's what everyone said about him. Even when we visited India, which is where he died, talking to, his landlords, his friends, his drinking buddies. Yeah. He was always helping people, had a strong sense of justice, right and wrong, kind person, charming as anything, could talk his way through any kind of situation. Very brilliant person.
He was a good guy. So tell me then, how does his loss, your grief, how does that affect your faith?
Yeah, I have spent some time thinking about that. I think my faith, I wouldn't say it kind of insulates me in any way from the sadness of it. I don't sort of hover above because of some kind of Zen state that, I can achieve because of faith. That's not what faith is about, right? It's not, my faith isn't actually about me. My faith is about what my faith is in, right? It's about the fact that I have something quite firm that I hold on to, and I believe holds on to me. Um, I mean, I think maybe it's less about how my faith impacts my grief, but more about how my grief also impacts my faith
Yeah,
too,
sure.
right? Like, so when my brother died, we saw we had to go and identify his body at the morgue. One of the worst days of my life.
And this was in
Um,
India, you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I traveled with my mum and my sister after he died, and just the kind of deathness of death, the finality of death. It, obviously it had never struck me in the same way as in that moment when I saw his body. And then as I went into Easter, and now again, we're now coming up to the third Easter after that, I just think somehow the reality of what Jesus went through, the fact that the God of the universe, that's what we believe, right? That he came, he incarnated, came and took on a body, and then that body was killed. And that's absolutely central to our faith, isn't it? That's what he did for us. And in dying, he took on all the sin and the sorrow and the brokenness of the world. That's really hit home for me in a very, very different way. And even, though I still have so many questions about, why did my brother have to go through the things that he did? Somehow I believe that Jesus having taken all that on himself is huge. And the fact that we have a God who, in the Bible, he's not the God who created the planet and then stayed distant, but he's the God who came close. And, so many verses have spoken to me. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. That Jesus came and walked through that valley and took on that valley and took on all that darkness and that brokenness for us. There's something very, very powerful in that, that I hold on to. And then, of course, there's the hope side of it. The third day after Good Friday is that he broke the power of sin and darkness and death, and is making things new, and will one day make all things new, and then things will somehow make sense.
Yeah.
I just taught Job, actually. I teach at Sunday school.
Okay.
And we did a series on Job for our kids age 6 to 11. So you really got to think, like, what do I believe? I'm teaching these kids. Job isn't necessarily the easiest book to teach to that age, but I was just so encouraged again that the Bible is such a realistic book. Like, you look at Job, and in some ways the book of Job doesn't give a final answer to suffering, but in some ways we don't have a final answer to how, what's it for. And it would be wrong to give a really simple try answer, wouldn't it, to why it happens. To some degree, we're humans and we don't know everything. But the fact that God spoke to Job at the end of the book through the storm, this absolute majesty that he would speak to Job because Job mattered.
Yeah.
And just said, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?
Yeah.
Like, do you understand everything? And yet, he was good to Job and cared about him. And I believe God is there.
So you're so right. He is, isn't he? And and the hope that we profess is just it's just incredible. I know that your journey hasn't been an easy one, and you've shared some of the things on here today. But I know there's been a lot of turbulence, and it hasn't been smooth sailing at all. But I love that you're able to hold on to that hope that you profess, and you know that God is there, and you have faith in Him. If you could go back, back to our childhood days, even, and having gone through all this. I should have said, having gone through all of this, and you could go back. What would you tell yourself? How would you approach life? Would it be any different from how you've already done it, or would you approach it differently?
That is just a fantastic question. I mean, I suppose the thing I would say to myself is just like, be still and know that I am God. Like, relax. I'm here.
Chill.
I do a lot of like, trying to figure it out and trying to control everything. So that's probably still something I need to tell my 43-year-old self daily. Sure, I would have done some things differently. Yeah, yeah. But maybe you have to go through those things. No, but yeah, be still.
Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit like that too. The whole like trying to control things and then just let it go, be patient and let God do his thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Emma, is there anything that you would like to add to, maybe I haven't asked the question, but you think would be good for our listeners to know or to hear?
Just a little shout out to my wonderful husband, long suffering. When we got together, I've realized this afterwards, we only had 3 things in common, really. One was our childhood. So like I say, we kind of feel like we come from the same culture, even though he's from Canada. But we had quite a similar childhood experience because of living in Pakistan. And that's pretty big, actually. It just means there's a lot of things you don't have to explain.
Yeah.
Then we also had Eric Clapton in common. So we had our separate music collections, and the only CD we had in common was Eric Clapton. And now I'm really annoyed because of Eric Clapton's politics. I can't go to a concert of Eric Clapton because I feel, so it feels like that's been a bit marred, actually. But Jordan's a big musician, and honestly, he wondered whether he could marry me because I don't like jazz. It was a really big deal for him, but he's somehow still holding on 15 years later. Yeah. But the other really big thing that we have in common is our faith. And, I just think that has held us through thick and thin. That we're both absolutely committed to each other. And I think that a lot of that comes from our kind of faith, that there's an unconditional commitment. Well, I say that unconditional. Of course, there are cases where, right, we're not talking about cases of abuse, etc.
Yeah.
But we're not giving up on each other, however hard things get. And we have had some really hard times, through my brother's death. But also, I had long COVID. I've had various illnesses, and it's been hard. And also, parenting and marriage together at the same time. You think, could I just get marriage sorted out first, and then it would be so much easier to parent? But it happens all at the same time, and it's just so much, to try and figure out.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to God. Someone said about Jordan once, a friend of ours from church, if you cut him open, you just find gold.
Aww.
And I thought that's just him, both in terms of the fact that he's just so solid and kind, but also he's strong, because I'm much more the extrovert, and I don't know if you know the Enneagram. I'm very much an Enneagram type 2, and Jordan's a type 5. Like, there's a lot of tension that comes from that. We're quite different, and I worry, that I'm the dominant one or whatever. But he's strong, and that's been really, really good for me. So, I'll finish with a little romantic note there.
No, thanks for sharing that. And Jordan is all that for sure. Yeah. Emma, tell us, what's your one message?
I think something I've been learning recently is that little things are okay. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes as Christians and people who've grown up with a lot of very amazing Christian people around us, we know we're not saved by our works, right? It's a gift of God. It's grace. We don't save ourselves, but we can put this other pressure on ourselves that you have to live like a really radical life and do something really, really big and amazing. And I think that does put quite a lot of pressure on. And of course, it's true, right? We want our lives to make a difference and to use the gifts that God has given us to bless the world and to do good. But I think I have been learning that little things are also okay. Like just kindness to someone else, at the school gate that not many other people talk to, and I don't have to sort that person's whole life out. In fact, I can't. But just being a friend, that is actually a little thing, but it's so important. And I can be quite, as we talked about with this whole sense of restlessness. Oh, I need to move somewhere. Maybe I need to be living in Pakistan. Maybe I need to be doing more things than I'm doing. Actually, God has put me where I am, and He's given me these 4 kids, and I really need to focus on what He's put in front of me. And like, even sometimes I think very often about changing career. This is my 21st year since I qualified as a teacher. I haven't been doing it linearly. I've done lots of different things in between, but sometimes I start thinking, 20 more years of teaching, like, till I can retire. Like, is that really what I'm going to do? And who knows, it might not be. But the way that I teach my students, they come into my classroom and there's 25 to 30 kids in there. I know sometimes very little about their lives. Sometimes you hear the challenges that kids are facing. And I just think, I can be there and I can do as good a job for this 1 hour that they're in my life as I can. I can pray. I can try to build them up. I can teach them, because education is a blessing, right? And I just feel like, let me do those little things well that God has given me. So, I don't know, just relax, Emma. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. I get what you're saying. It's so true. Like, being present in the space that God has placed us in is not always easy to do, but it's so important because He's got us there for a reason. And I think you're right. Like, we often think of, what can we do that's out there and that's big and that's gonna, make a huge impact on someone. And I think what you're doing, maybe because you're in the thick of it, you don't see it, but you're making a big impact even by doing those small things. Yeah. And so my question, actually, do you find that that takes a lot of effort to think about what those small things are? Or does it just come quite naturally if you just let yourself, relax, as you said?
Yeah, no, I think it doesn't take an effort. I think, of course, it takes cultivating an attitude of, waiting on God and sort of praying for His perspective on things. Yeah, I think but it's a slow growth, like most things in life, slow process of learning that. But actually, it's a much more liberating way to live. To not constantly have to be proving myself, but just kind of a trust and a waiting sort of attitude.
Oh, that's great. Emma, thank you so much for sharing some of your story with us. I know that it's going to resonate with so many of us who's just, life is complicated, life is hard. And how do we navigate it with our eyes on the Lord? So no, thank you for bringing that out. Emma, is there anything that you would say has been helpful to you in this journey?
Yeah, a number of things, actually. We had a memorial for my brother. As you know, actually, you were there a year ago. That was very helpful to have a community of people kind of really supporting us. I loved it that you were there and other people who knew Mikhail from childhood. That was just so important. It really was a time of celebrating his life without, sweeping under the carpet all the sadness that came from both his life and struggles and his death. But it really was celebrating him as a person. And it was, I was really thankful for just good friends. We also did a memorial with some of his other friends, some of his London friends, in a pub soon after he died.
Okay.
And that was a real eclectic mix of people, and a lot of people there that people that I wouldn't normally mix with, kind of people a little bit alternate, with much more alternative lifestyles than my very straight-laced lifestyle, let's say. And people a lot of them have had, issues with addictions in their own life, and they kind of know that story. I found that such a powerful event in that pub, because they all wanted to know how he died. They wanted to know details of, what substances he was using. But it was done in such like, they all knew what it's like. There was no judgment whatsoever in their talk. And I actually had this moment where I was like, wow, as a church, we could learn so much from these people, about not at all being judgmental, about being loyal friends through thick and thin. So I actually found that event and those connections really, really meaningful for me. And I think probably vice versa, for them to meet the family as well. So I'm really thankful for that. I think, of course, sometimes in church we do like to just focus on the good stories and the happy stories, and kind of struggle a little bit more with just sitting in the sorrow and in the tension of unanswered questions. But I have to say, I've had some really, really good Christian friends as well. And like when my pastor visited after my brother died, the verse that he quoted was, "The day that I was dreading has come upon me." And I just thought, spot on. And thank you, God, that the Bible has verses like that in it, because that was my experience. For over 20 years, I was always waiting for bad news about my brother in many ways. And yet when that phone call came that he had died, it took the floor out from under our feet. And that is exactly, it just kind of summed up how I was feeling. And I just really appreciated that kind of verse, and just coming and just sitting in the sadness with me at that time. I have a book also that I really recommend about grief, and it's American author. She's called Tish Harrison Warren, and it's called Prayer in the Night. And it is full of very rich theology around grief and being human. Really, I find her absolutely excellent. She's written another book that I've just read recently called Liturgy of the Ordinary.
Okay.
And it's very much about kind of meeting God in our very ordinary lives. Really recommend those strongly.
Oh, thank you for that. We'll add those to the show notes as well, so people can have access to them. Yeah,
great.
Emma, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really helpful. Really helpful. And I think our listeners might want to reach out to you. So if they did want to do that, what would be a good way for them?
Yeah, I'm happy for my email address to go in the show notes. Yeah, it's actually my maiden name still, the name that you accidentally called me when you introduced me at the beginning.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, and I'm conscious of time, so I think we'll wrap it up. Emma, thanks again. Really appreciate you being on here.
Oh, thank you. So nice to chat with you, Sedef.
And you too.
And just like that, we have reached the end of another fascinating conversation. Now remember to check out Crowd Church at www.crowd.church, even if you might not see the point of church. You see, we are a digital church on a quest to discover how Jesus can help us live a more meaningful life. We are a community, a space to explore the Christian faith, and a place where you can contribute and grow. And you are welcome at Crowd Church. Don't forget to subscribe to the What's the Story podcast on your favorite podcast app, because we've got a treasure trove of inspiring stories coming your way, and we would basically hate for you to miss any of them. And just in case no one has told you yet today, remember, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. What's the Story is a production of Crowd Church. Our fantastic team, including Anna Kettle, Sadaf Bainon, and me, Matt Edmondson, and Tanya Hutzalak, work behind the scenes tirelessly to bring you all these fabulous Stories. Our theme song is a creative work of Josh Edmondson. And if you're interested in the transcript or show notes, head over to our website, whatsthestorypodcast.com. And whilst you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter to get all of this goodness delivered straight to your inbox. So that's it from all of us this week here at What's the Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.